Well, hello everybody. I'm here kind of kicking and screaming today. We are going to go into the vortex of abyss. The place where I was hoping I wouldn't have to go, but I need to go there, and I imagine you're going to need to go there too. This is a special video because I just wanted to share it with my subscribers. You guys will probably be the ones seeing this first. And then I'm going to be making a series of videos off of a piece of this one as the introduction that's going to be used to introduce how you basically flash firmware for each of the different watches. You could have a D5 or an X1, both of them very similar. And you could have done something like I did. So I want to use this first part to invite you to be very careful when you're installing clock skins on your watch. You might end up doing what I've done. On the No.1 D5, I managed to mess it up so badly that when it tries to boot up, it gets to a certain point and it just stops, like right here. It won't go any further. I didn't think I could mess things up messing around with the clock skins, but I did. On the X1, the FINOW X1, it does boot all the way up. That's a good sign. However, by messing around improperly with the clock skins, I got it to the point where if I press and hold to change clock skins, it goes black, and it pops right back. Now I've got a full clock skin folder in there, and it's not letting me change clock skins, although I can get into all of my basic watch functions. So what I'm having to do in both of these cases is to flash the firmware. Now the good news is there's new firmware for both of these watches. So the video you're about to see is the lead-in process for a complete separate video on how to flash the No.1 and how to flash the X1. But I want to warn you what you can and cannot do that from my experience with the clock skin folder. If you're at the point where you are installing clock skins and you've created that I can't go on that one, it's still booting. You've created the clock skin folder on your watch. Remember, we can get into that by going down to the File Manager and taking a look at the clock skin folder. And it's spelled exactly like that, clock skin, capital C, capital S, not with a plural on the end. Some people get messed up by putting a clock skins. It's not plural, singular. Okay, if you have that clock skin folder, and then inside of there, you have all the different folders that you have named however you want them, that have each of the clock skin files within them, right? Okay, you're with me. And each of those will produce a new clock skin on your face. That's great. However, here's where the problem comes in. When you have the watch linked to your computer and you're going about doing updates to your clock skin folder, lesson 1, do not, under any circumstances, after you've created the clock skin folder, do not drag that clock skin folder to the trash and throw it away, and then drag a whole new clock skin folder with all the subfolders back onto your watch. I ran into the problem by doing that. That froze this one. Apparently, the system is probably putting some invisible files that you don't see in the clock skin folder when it indexes these things so it can show them to you on the screen. Whatever happened, when I threw the whole folder away and brought a brand new folder in, it messed things up so that it gets to the point where it's trying to read the index file to load up all the different clock skins, and it's frozen. That's No.1. The second one is, I have this on a short timeout. If you are, again, trying to just like delete everything and put everything back in again, and on your computer you selected the clock skin folder, and then you use that select all or command, depending on a Mac or a PC, where you highlight all of the stuff, and you drag all that stuff to the trash, that got me into this mode. It didn't like brick it, that's not the right word, but stop it from booting all the way up. But by doing that, apparently I also did something. I don't know if I threw away invisible files or whatnot, but by going in here in the clock skin and using the command to select all and dragging those to the trash, emptying the trash, and then replacing them, it didn't work anymore. The clock skins are not indexed, and only the last clock skin that happened to be on the watch is available for me. But it's not so far gone that it won't boot up. The way I do it now is I go into the clock skin folder on the computer, I highlight the first one, I scroll to the bottom one, and then I shift-click on the bottom one. That selects all of the visible folders and drag them to the trash, empty the trash, and then come back and reload the folders that I want in the clock skin folder directly into the clock skin folder from the computer. That's consistently worked for me, and I haven't run into this problem of not being able to access any of the clock skins or actually getting to the place where I can't boot up any further. I don't want to bother a lot of the folks who are going to come in here just for the process of doing the firmware update with me on that, but I did want to share that with you guys because you probably, if you're subscribed, really like this stuff because I go on, and this is important. So if you're in that condition with your watches, I feel sorry for you, and I hope that what we're about to do helps solve my problem and yours to get us back on track. In the meantime, if you're here, fortunately, because your watch is working perfectly, and you are looking at updating the firmware on either watch, or, and now I'm really in a gray zone, if you're rooted and you are going to do an update and you need to go back and unroot yourself to the stock ROM, then you need to do this as well, I guess. Maybe someday I'll be talking out of confidence in what I'm saying there, but right now that's a gray area. Either way, we are going to walk down the path together of how you do this. This video will not have the on-camera demonstration of what you do on the computer as we walk through it with each watch. That's saved for a later video where I'll do a separate one on the No.1 D5, on the FINOW X1, and on the yet to come in but soon to arrive X5 from FINOW. And that one also has a firmware update. So we're going to do 3 videos. What's going to be at the beginning of all 3 of those videos is exactly the same, and it's going to be what I'm putting on this video right now. Most of you could probably follow what I'm about to say on this video and fix or do your firmware update. The other videos with the actual on-camera process on the computer is for those who are really new and really scared and really want to have something to follow to go by. So those of you who watch everything I do, if you seem to see the same piece showing up in 4 videos, at least this one, and then one for each of these other ones, you can skip past all that, the paperwork part, because that's the part we're going to do for you right now, and get that done so that you can get started on your firmware updates. All right, let's begin. 3, 2, 1. Greetings and welcome to Smartwatch Tics. We're a YouTube channel that's dedicated to smartwatch technology. Today we're going to move deep into an area that most of you may not be comfortable with, but by the end of this video, hopefully you will. We're going to take a ride in the world of firmware. We're going to take a look at 2 different scenarios where you may need to update or flash your firmware to your watch, or actually your phone. What you're going to see will work with any Android device. Scenario number 1 is you've got yourself a really nice smartwatch, like this one, which is the FINOW X1, and it's working perfectly. And what you want to do is an update to the firmware because the company has just notified you that there's an update available. The first thing you want to do is make sure you're connected to Wi-Fi. Go into your settings, scroll all the way to the bottom at About Device, open that up, and tap on Wireless Update. Now, if you're really lucky, the company is pushing the update to you, a lot like the phone companies do when you have an update to your operating system on Android on your phone. You've done that before. You've seen that happen. We say check for updates. And if you're really lucky, you get an update. And if you're not, and which is mostly the case, you're going to be told that your firmware is up to date, which is not true because you know there's a new one. You can go down and check your numbers, which I suggest you do, and write these things down, especially the kernel number with its date, your build number, and your custom build number. Do that before you go through this firmware update so you'll be able to verify that it worked, okay? So the first thing you've done is check to see if there's an automatic update available, and if there's not, you're going to need to watch this video. All right? That's with a nicely working watch. If, on the other hand, you happen to have a watch that is frozen, like the No.1 D5 here, it's a great watch. In fact, it's very similar. They're almost identical watches. But this one, I did something I shouldn't have done when I was playing around with installing clock skins, and I got it frozen. It's not bricked, but it's stuck. It won't get past the boot up process, and it's frozen like this. This process, hopefully, will work. If not, we have to go to a deeper process, and if I do, we will do that in a future video. But we're hoping that we can just simply do the same thing by flashing the firmware back onto the watch. And in this case, I won't be flashing the original, I'll be flashing the update onto it using the same procedures for both watches, but different software, the flashing software. And we hopefully will get out of this stuck mode. Now, in the process I'm going to go through, I'll be talking about where you need to plug your watch into the computer. And when you get to that part, you're going to make sure that your watch is off. Now, by off, I don't mean just pushing the button so that it's black. That's not off. Off is pushing the button hard, holding it. Well, let's do it when it's on. Pressing it, holding it, and hitting that center button to make sure that it turns completely off. You with me? It won't be working if you just have the black screen. You have to have the power completely off. So what about this situation where I can't turn it off? Well, if you're in that predicament, or if it's boot looping, as they call it, where it just keeps booting up, but it would not start that booting up and rebooting process if you could only take out the battery. And these things are sealed. There's really no way to get in and take out the battery. You can unscrew the back, you can put in a SIM card, but the battery is hidden below. It's not removable. Well, in a sense it is. And for those of you daring enough to go into this, when you take the back off of the watch and you take a look at the layout where your SD card is over here, or not your SD, your communication card is over there. You find the layout in a way where you have a connector down on this lower left-hand side. Now, that's true of the No.1 D5 watch. This is the battery connection. So, you're going to take a screwdriver. This is very simple, but follow with me. If you're in this predicament on this watch, you take the screwdriver underneath the cables and you push up to remove that connector. That took the battery out. It disconnected the power. Then you press it back in, straight down. Okay? If it doesn't turn on and boot up, you're okay. You're in the same situation as this watch. If it starts booting and looping, you got another whole problem, and this won't help you yet. You got to go to do other things. But in this case, it did. It's in the off position, just like this one. And with luck, I'll be able to flash the new firmware into both of these watches. Are you ready to begin? All right. We're going to be talking about manually updating your smartphone or smartwatch firmware because we just covered what you do if you have automatic update. If that doesn't work and you're going to flash your firmware yourself, this is the instructions you'll need to follow. What you need is a PC, not a Mac, that's running Windows Vista or newer, okay? The video you're looking at is going to use the Windows 7 version. One, because I've got an older Windows version 7, and two, it's a whole lot easier than the Windows 8 stuff. We're not covering all that here, although I will show you the steps, okay? You're at youtube.com/smartwatchtics where you're watching this. In case you're seeing this someplace else, you want to get the full details, head on over on your browser to youtube.com/smartwatchtics. Okay, you're going to need the PC. And you're going to need 3 folders with these files. And this often comes to you as one zip file from a vendor's website. If you go on there and it has a download section and it shows you the latest firmware, the download you get when you unpack it or unzip it will probably have 3 folders in it. It's going to have a folder with USB drivers, another one with a thing called an SP flash tool, and then the critical updated firmware. Now, let's walk through this. The USB drivers. This is whenever you install something new on your computer that you want it to be able to talk to, like it used to be an external DVD drive or something like that. You'd need a driver. Well, same is true here. This is special code that you install on your PC so your PC can talk to your device, whether it's a smartwatch or a smartphone, all right? Then you need this thing called an SP flash tool. And that's basically a program that's used to install the new firmware onto your watch or smartphone. And finally, the updated software, which is exactly what you'll be installing. All right? Now, this is broken into 2 basic parts. The first part about USB drivers, you only have to do once. That's the good thing. And if this sounds too complicated, take it to a computer shop and with your file on a thumb drive or something, or even on the hard drive, and ask them to do the whole firmware update for you. But in the meantime, you could just ask them to update the drivers or install the drivers. Once this is done, you won't have to do this complex part that you're about to see again. It's a one-time shot on that same PC. The drivers are in there. It should work, okay? It's this 2 and 3 of using this SP flash tool to update the firmware that will change from time to time as you get new firmware. So how do we go about installing the USB drivers? Let's walk through these procedures. If you have a Windows 8 or newer computer, it's more complicated because a system was set up where the drivers have signatures in them. They're signed drivers. And these drivers that you're installing are unsigned. They don't have that signature, so it will fail the signature verification on the computer. So you have to disable the driver signature verification, following these steps to do that. Wait a minute. You're going to turn off the signature verification. That means it's vulnerable to downloading stuff that hasn't been reliably checked by whatever source it is that approves this stuff and allows a signature to be offered, right? You're doing this at your own risk, folks, but you're doing it in, hopefully, agreement with the smartwatch manufacturer where you downloaded these files from, right? I hope so. Don't download these things from a source you're not really familiar with on the internet, because in installing these USB drivers without the signature verification active, who knows? Just that word of warning. Of course, Windows 7 and older doesn't matter. There's no signature verification. You can install anything from anywhere. And, well, I don't want to get too bad about this, but just be careful that what you're doing when you're installing drivers has to do with the smartwatch that you own or the phone that you own, and is not some whiz-bang thing that's supposed to, I don't know, let you snoop through your camera on your smartphone remotely, blah, blah, blah. With that said, these are the steps that I presume you follow. I have not done this. I don't have the Windows 8 or 10 or 8.1 to do it on for all of this. But these are the steps you would follow. Let's walk them through. First, you have to disable the signature verification process, and this block is about that. You open your charms bar simply by holding the Win key and pressing C, and then you select to change the PC settings, okay? Click Recovery on the left-hand side and restart your computer. Okay, it's down below the Advanced Startup. So, your computer is rebooting, and you wait until it comes up with the blue screen, and then you select Troubleshoot. All right, you there? Has it booted up? Okay. You select the advanced options at that point, and then Startup Settings. Okay, click the Restart again. All right, then you'll see some options to choose. Look down for option 7 to disable driver signature verification. When your PC boots up fully, you're ready. Now your Windows 8 or 10 computer is in basically the same condition as the old Vista or 7 with relationship to drivers. And you'll be able to install these drivers that are unsigned if you follow this. Now, let's get to what we actually do. This is the process for everything at this point, but in particular Vista and Windows 7, if you're running on those machines. You got to prepare the software. So you download the required software and unzip the files to reveal these different folders. Okay? These may be in Chinese, folks, so look for the word USB and maybe some Chinese characters, or SP flash if you see those in English. That'll give you a hint as to what's in these folders, and those are the ones you're going to be wanting to use here. You download those and unpack them. Okay, so you've got these 3 folders. Make sure you know the path to these folders on your computer so you can find them later, because you are going to need to navigate through your folders to locate these files that you're going to be installing. So make note of where they are, probably in your downloads folder, most likely, but it's up to you where they end up. You might have put them on a flash thumb drive or something. Wherever they are, make sure you know where they are. Okay, do not, see that bold word? Do not connect your device to your PC right now. You're leaving your watch or your phone on the side, turned off. That's the last step we're going to be doing. Some people mess up and plug in at this point, and you don't want to do that. Wait until we tell you to do that. You install your USB drivers next, and you only need to do this once. If the USB driver folder has an automatic installer, you can use it to install, and you can skip all the rest of the stuff. Simply follow the instructions of the automatic installer, and when you're done, go to step 3, which is coming up. That's the easy way out. If you don't see something in that folder that has the USB on it, that has a file that ends in a .exe, if you see that, click on it, even if it's in Chinese probably. If you don't see that, then you don't have an automatic installer, and you need to do this manually, really manually. And now we're going to do that in these last instructions. If there's no auto installer, then on your PC, locate and run Device Manager. All right? When you open the Device Manager, touch any item in the list, doesn't really matter. You just need to activate something so you can light up the action menu at the top. From the top, drop down the action menu and select Legacy Hardware. Okay, that's an option that will open a dialog box. All this is to get to the point where you can install these, quote, foreign drivers. When that dialog box opens, click Next, and then select the option to install manually. There's 2 options. Select manually and click Next again. When you get to the next page, click the hard disk button, and locate the USB drivers, all right? When you click the hard disk, it's going to open up the navigation thing, and you click through to get back along the path to get to the folders and the one that has the USB drivers. And then you stop for a second. Listen to me now. You have one of two kind of PCs, a 32-bit or a 64-bit. And you need to know which you've got because the drivers are different. So when you browse and get to the driver file, you need to make sure you know which you are running on. Most likely, if it's a relatively new one, it's 64-bit. But just to be sure, you can right-click on My Computer. You know, when you bring it up from the Start menu, the My Computer, right-click on that My Computer and check the properties. In the properties, you'll see whether you are 32-bit or 64-bit. Make note of that, and then you're going to go and select the USB driver. There's probably two of them in there. One of them will have the number 64 as part of it. Click on that one if it's a 64-bit machine, or the other one if it's 32. All right? Once you've done that, you've basically selected the driver that needs to be installed, and now you click Next. You click Next again, and then you click Finish. If you're successful, your USB drivers are installed. So, for those of you on the Windows 8 or newer, you can now re-enable your driver signature verification. I don't know if you need to just reboot and it will automatically turn it back on, or if you need to go through the basic steps like this to get to the same place so that you can re-enable the signature verification. But I suggest that you don't leave it in the condition of being disabled, just in case there's a way a hacker could come in with some malware and enable, and install drivers if you had this thing disabled on your Windows 8 or 8.1 or 10 machine. We're done with installing the drivers. That is probably the most challenging part. If you get past this, the rest is going to be easy. All right. To flash the firmware, you're going to need to follow these instructions. It looks a little complicated, but it's not really. We're going to use a specific file. The one that I have is capital ENG, meaning it's English. There are different languages. It's an SP_flash_tool_V5. It's version 5. There's a version 3 out there, and it works differently. There's videos on the internet on how to use version 3, and at this point, the version 3 may not support what you're trying to do, so try to make sure you got a version 5. There's some revision numbers usually after the file, so you know what version you're using. Probably the latest version is great. If this is one that came with that package of files that your vendor sent you, including the firmware file and the drivers, this is probably a good one to use. Unless it's in Chinese or something and you don't read that, then you're going to want to use an English version. Whichever way, you're looking for the SP Flash tool, all right? So, in the SP Flash tool folder, you're not just going to launch it by clicking Flash Tool EXE. You're going to right-click on it, okay? Right-click and then, select the flashtool.exe. And you'll have options. Select Run as Administrator and start running the Flash Tool program as administrator. This will save you headaches later down the road of having to enter your verification that you're an administrator if you have your machine set up that way. Just a wise thing to do, I understand, to be able to do this cleanly by running the Flash Tool program as administrator. Wait for it to fully load. They say it takes quite a while before it gets up, and you don't want to try to second guess it. This whole thing is a time of patience. Have something else to do. Clean the house, make lunch, go take a walk. There's a good chance that some of this might take a while. So don't rush it. If you do, you could have problems, all right? Once it's all loaded up, you're going to see a screen, and on the right side, you're going to click on Scatter Loading. Now, for the watch device that you're watching right now, we're going to have the whole computer walkthrough later. This is the overview text of what is coming. And watch on the screen, and you'll see where we're clicking on Scatter Loading. when you click on that, again, you navigate to the firmware folder now, and one item should appear, and that's the scatter file. A scatter file is kind of like a directory, an index. It's a small little text file that tells the program, the Flash tool, what other files need to be loaded and how and where. So when you click on scatter loading and you load the scatter file, it's going to be populated with a bunch of file names, and you'll see those on the screen. They have check boxes to the left. Most of them, sometimes all of them, most of them will be checked. Don't check any that are not checked. It may cause this whole thing to hiccup. Just leave them alone. Don't check any more of the check boxes. Okay, that's all done. Now, there's a little drop-down menu just above where all these files are loaded, and it has some options, and one of them is like firmware update. You could maybe select that one if you have all of the boxes checked automatically. However, advice I'm getting from those who know is just select download only. It will update the firmware in the way the vendor intended without possibly doing some deeper updates to files you don't want to be touching. So select download only from that drop-down menu that's above the listed files, and then above all of that is a big button that says download. Tap that download button, and we're ready to start plugging in your device. Now, you remember at the beginning of this, I hope, and I'll repeat it again, when you plug in your device, you want it to be turned off. You do not want it on. If you can remove the battery, do so, and then reinstall the battery, but don't turn your device on, okay? The only time that you would just simply power down the device and leave it that way is if you don't have a removable battery inside. If you can take the back off and remove the battery, do so now, even if you have it powered down. It's a wise thing to do, okay? So if you can remove it, do that, and then reinstall it. Put the battery back in, but don't turn it on. If it's not removable, turn it off. If it's stuck booting, let it run until the battery is fully empty. If you don't want to take the back off and disconnect the battery, it's this way. If it's either stuck booting up or it's in that looping process, turn it off or let it go until the battery runs down completely and it's dead, basically, from no power. When all that's done and you know your device is completely off, you connect that device to your PC using your USB cable and wait. Do not turn the device on at any time, and do not disconnect. This is where big patience comes in, especially if you ran your battery all the way down. It's going to have to charge with enough juice for all of this stuff to go, and the computer's going to sit there with that download waiting until the watch has enough awareness of itself to allow the process to begin. That could be a couple of hours, I understand. So be patient, okay? Don't turn it off and don't disconnect. Don't think that nothing is happening. Let it go all night if you need to. And make sure before you even connect the cable that you've set the device and the cable in a place where it's not going to get jiggled. Don't touch it. Don't wiggle it. A lot of people have ended up with bad problems because they decided to move their watch or their phone, and that little movement caused a disconnect, and that interrupted the process and basically stopped it all. So once you begin, leave everything alone and don't let anybody touch it. Not your dog, not your cat, not your kids, okay? If the battery was dead again, it may take extra long for the battery to charge, so be patient. All right. You want to make sure your PC has a strong battery charge as well, and it's actually best, of course, if it's plugged into a power. Now, if you have an uninterruptible power supply, that's even better. Goodness, if you had a fluctuation in power from the power company while all this is happening and it shuts down your PC, if you don't have a laptop, that could be another way that you'd run into an interrupt in this process that would be devastating for your device. So make sure you've got either a really strong battery charge on your laptop, and it's actually best if you just keep your PC plugged in. Now, Once you see the green OK light come on the computer screen, you should be able to disconnect your device and turn it on, and everything should work normally, except you'll have the new firmware. All right? Again, if you want to check what that new firmware is, you can go into your settings and scroll all the way down to About, and then at the very bottom of About, it usually lists the new software version, and that should tell you if you were successful in getting your firmware updated. Also, if your device wasn't booting up properly to begin with, like you saw in mine, and it suddenly starts booting up and goes all the way, then you know you were successful too. However, if it doesn't boot up, these are some things you could try. Try removing the battery again, and if you can, and then reinstall it. Put your device in recovery mode, which we're not going to cover here. This again is a site to explore smartwatches. This is not a technical site for troubleshooting devices in these deep levels of fixing them. There are other websites that do that. I plan not to go there because it's taking away more of what I want to cover in all the goodies that come with these watches. Do a factory reset after you're in recovery mode or instead of. That's also not covered here. And check elsewhere on the internet if you need any more help on this. This whole area is complex. If you go, oh my goodness, it didn't work, and want to leave comments under this video, feel free. I'm not going to be answering them though. I answer most of them on all the other videos, but this area I'm not an expert. And if there are experts that are watching this and would like to communicate back to people, feel free to leave your issue in the comments and maybe somebody else will respond to you. But I highly advise you to check elsewhere for how you would torp your watch or install, root it if necessary, or do other procedures to get the firmware to install, okay? Alrighty, that's the basic outline. Once the drivers are installed in your computer, you don't have to do that again. You only do this section. So follow these procedures anytime you get an update for your firmware, and you should be okay.